Hello, Gene Schwimmer here. Welcome to today's vlog. Couple of short items, then on to the main subject. First one, I found this surprising, I have to confess. Here's the headline, mind-blowing, exclamation point. 58% of attendees at Trump's Wisconsin rally were not Republicans, up from 43% in Ohio. Several days ago, Trump's campaign manager, Brad Parscale, posted statistics from last week's rally held in Toledo, Ohio, which showed that 43% of attendees identified as either Democratic or independent. But that same statistic from Trump's Tuesday night rally in Wisconsin can only be described as staggering. 57.8% of registrants identified as either Democratic or independent. So I wonder if this could turn out to be, in 2020, a repeat of 2016, where the polls are just wrong, because this would indicate a great amount of support for Trump that I am not seeing in the polls, most of the polls anyhow. Now, the second item, this is also interesting. It's not really a surprise, though, but this is concerning our Democratic friends. As you probably know, there is a potential divide in the party, if you've been watching the primaries and just been listening to comments, between people who want a moderate and people who want a very far left progressive, or to put it another way, people who just want somebody who can beat Trump and people who want somebody who hews to an ideological line. Also, there's just a divide between actual beliefs, philosophies in the party, two philosophies. You had these moderate Democrats who were elected in congressional districts that Trump carried. At least they claim to be moderates, but there are moderates in the Democratic Party. But it seems to be a phenomenon that the far left is taking over, if not at least becoming more influential. So look at this headline, and then I'll give you my comment, because this is, well, it could turn out to be very important going forward for the Democratic Party. Quote, people will sit at home, unquote. Sanders supporters threaten to boycott vote if Democrats pick a centrist. Bernie Sanders supporters in Iowa are warning that a lack of enthusiasm for Joe Biden could bring the same result the nomination of another milquetoast Democrat, that would be Hillary Clinton, did 4 years ago, electing Donald Trump. Nominating a career center-left candidate such as Biden, the former vice president and 36-year Delaware senator, would dampen enthusiasm by the liberal populist grassroots, Sanders backers contend. Joe Jacklin, and forgive me, Joe, if I mispronounce your name, I'm just reading it, I've never heard it spoken. Joe Jacklin, 35, backed Sanders in the 2016 primary and wrote him in on the ballot that fall because he didn't like what Clinton, quote, stood for, unquote. He said he only regretted that decision, quote, to a degree, unquote, despite it helping give rise to Trump, who beat Clinton in Iowa 51% to 42%. Quote, I think that people will sit at home because they see establishment Democrats that don't really care. The only thing that they bring to the table is that they're not Trump. That is not going to drive enough people out that will get a win over Trump, unquote, he said. Now that's plain as day what Joe is saying, that a lack of, well, they're saying that they want a far-left Democrat. They want a far-left candidate, and if they don't get that candidate, that they'll just sit out the election. I see that as a real possibility. I especially see it as a real possibility because, remember, in the 2016 election, the chairwoman of the Democratic National Committee, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, was forced to resign. She was forced to resign because it came to light that she had put her thumb on the scales, that the primary, the Democratic primary in 2016 was rigged against Bernie Sanders. The primary very probably, or at least very possibly, was stolen from him. That was an additional reason besides Hillary being Hillary. But aside from that, this was an additional reason for at least Sanders supporters to stay home because they felt they were robbed. So now we have the same thing potentially happening now in 2020. There's a theory going around, which I actually mentioned in an earlier vlog, that the real reason that Nancy Pelosi held off for almost a month sending the articles of impeachment over to the Senate was to get the trial started late to keep one of the presidential candidates, Bernie Sanders, stuck in the Senate, unable to campaign in order to help Joe Biden. And she may also have wanted to keep the other presidential candidates, Democratic presidential candidates who happen to be Democrats, keep them in the Senate too, to clear the way for Biden. But I think the main motive, if this theory is correct, would have been to keep Sanders off the campaign trail in order to help Biden. Either way, it boils down to helping Biden, the moderate candidate, to keep a far left candidate from getting the nomination. Now, if Sanders supporters come to believe that, they're going to be as angry, if not angrier, than they were in 2016. They would have another incentive to sit out the 2020 election. And I could even go further and say that they will sit it out if Sanders is not the nominee, especially if there is not a particular presidential candidate who gets enough votes in the primary to become the nominee on the first ballot. And the reason that that is possible for, or at least more possible for Democrats than for Republicans, is because the Republican primary is winner take all. You get the most primary votes in a particular state, you get all of that state's delegates. But in the Democratic primary, it's a proportional system. You have to get at least 15% of the primary voters, but everybody who reaches that 15% threshold gets at least some delegates. So you can see Bernie Sanders getting most of the delegates in one state and then Biden getting most of the delegates in another. The point being, or the bottom line being, if Sanders goes into the convention, well, I think the way it would be settled in a brokered convention probably would be if no candidate gets enough primary votes to win the nomination outright, that the candidate who gets the most primary votes would get the nomination. Now, if that's Sanders, if he does not get the nomination and he has the most votes, and you consider what was done to him in 2016, I think it is very possible. Well, you may even see violence. In fact, I did read an article, or I saw a tweet, or it could have been a video of somebody actually saying it on tape, but somebody somewhere said, a Bernie supporter, or at least a far left progressive, said that 1968, the riots of 1968, outside the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, I guess a lot of you weren't old enough to have seen that on TV, but I saw it on TV, and it was a full-on riot. So we have somebody saying today that that would look like a picnic compared to what could happen outside the convention hall in 2020 if Sanders, well, I think this person said if he does not get the nomination, period, but especially if he gets the most votes. So this is going to be something to watch. There is, well, in my opinion, it's really two parties now. It's a Democratic Party and a Green Party, and they're just trying to stay together because separately neither party would win enough votes to defeat the Republicans. So they're trying to cobble together a coalition somehow. I don't know how they're going to do it. It just looks increasingly hard to do that. Now we get to the main item. This news just came out today. I'm recording this on a Friday. It has to do with impeachment. Trump has added to his legal team. He is adding Alan Dershowitz, and this really surprised me, but I think it's an inspired choice. I'm going to tell you why in a minute. Well, they're both inspired choices, but Alan Dershowitz and Kenneth Starr. Now, the reason for, well, let me give you the headline here. Trump adds Ken Starr, Alan Dershowitz to impeachment trial defense team. He's been on TV a lot defending the president, but number one, he is brilliant. I mean, compared to Adam Schiff and Jerry Nadler, you got to be kidding. He is an absolutely brilliant lawyer, and he has a record of support. He's a very liberal Democrat. He voted for Hillary Clinton, and he's also consistent that he opposed the impeachment of Bill Clinton. So he has a special credibility. I hope he's going to be one of the, because there are several lawyers, I don't know how many of them are going to make statements and presentations during the trial. I hope he is one of the ones who does. But the second inspired choice is Ken Starr, because Ken Starr was the special counsel on the impeachment investigation of Ken Starr. So he is in a perfect position to contrast that impeachment process with this one. I assume that's what he's going to do. I hope he'll get to speak. And if he does, well, as I said, he has a special credibility on that issue. So stay tuned, as I always say, stay tuned and see what happens. And now to the very last item, also related to this impeachment circus. I call it an impeachment circus. I guess that's the main topic, impeachment circus. I want to dispute people who have said, well, one of the defenses of Trump is that there is no crime, there is no specific crime alleged in either of the impeachment articles. Now, there are people arguing that that doesn't matter, that there does not have to be a specific legal crime or illegal crime because the Constitution does not specify that. The Constitution says treason, bribery, other high crimes and misdemeanors. It doesn't say it has to be an official crime that's on the books, so it doesn't matter. But I believe that it does matter for this reason. Precedent. Can you logically impeach somebody for a lesser offense than what a previous impeached president has been acquitted for? In other words, for Nixon, he resigned before he was impeached. So let's stick with Clinton. Clinton was accused of specific crimes. That's one of the elements that Ken Starr will be able to bring to the trial, because in his investigation, when he testified before the House, he named either 11 or 16, I don't remember the number. If I get a chance, I'll look it up. But he listed numerous impeachable offenses, and he did, well, we know that Clinton committed crimes. The reason that Democrats gave for defending him was that his crime was, quote unquote, only about sex. It was perjury, suborning perjury, witness tampering, definitely perjury. And remember, he was disbarred. So there is no doubt that there was a crime. I won't get into the details or whether he should have been acquitted because it was only about sex. I don't believe that. But the point is, there was a specific crime. So if there is a specific crime on the books, perjury, and the president is acquitted, then how can you remove another president from office for having committed no official crime? That's my point. How can you remove Trump when you previously acquitted Clinton for doing worse. I would argue much worse, perjury. And my last point is that after watching this fantastic vlog, how can you resist thumbs up if you like this video? Share it with anybody you think would also like the video. Got any comments? You can put them in the comment section below the video. You can also put in that same comment section suggestions for future topics or questions that you might have. You can also subscribe. I don't know how you can resist subscribing. Subscribe, 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 and finally come back and see me again. I look forward to seeing all of you again. And until I do see all of you again, bye.